This is the Think Podcast for entrepreneurs, business owners, and real estate professionals. Insight, real talk, systems that scale. Think about it. This podcast is brought to you by Rehab Financial Group, your premier source for 100% financing, offering fast, reliable funding for your next real estate investment project. For more information on how Rehab Financial Group can help you with your next fix and flip or ground up construction project, visit us at www.rehabfinancial.com.
Welcome and thank you for joining another edition of Think Podcast. And today we have what I'm really excited about this for you guys, because listen to the words that I'm going to tell you right now. We have a very special guest here today in Brian Augsberger, who is the Senior Director of All Sales for RFG, Rehab Financial Group. But today is going to probably be one of the most impactful Think podcasts we've ever done, because Brian is going to actually tell you what it looks like behind the scenes. Now, I was an underwriter for a number of years, as many of you know, but he's going to tell you really how it works behind closed doors and how things are evaluated and the best case scenarios for you guys on how to present your deals and the tips and tricks, as I always say, for really being successful in this business. So Brian, welcome to the show. And I want you to tell, obviously the listeners and everybody about you and what you've got kind of going on in your history, but folks know that he's worked at the highest levels of kind of corporate banking, investment banking, and then also is a true subject matter expert in getting deal flow approved, funded, and from a training and education standpoint, their website, I'll tell you right now, is rehabfinancialgroup.com. Everybody in the business, we all call them RFG because it's easier, but rehabfinancialgroup.com. And on that website is a absolute mega load of educational deals for you guys, including sizers and, how to price loans, how to actually do loans. It's one of my favorite websites in all of the industry. And I'll shut up now and let you talk a little bit about the awesome stuff you guys have going on at RFG and a little bit about your history. So please talk about yourself a little bit, if you would, and tell everybody who you are.
Sure. No, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm
so
excited.
just a little bit about myself. I started at, as you said, JP Morgan, and I quickly figured out that wasn't for me. I was probably 6 months into it, and I recall this like it was yesterday. I got a call, we were in a service team of 4, and there was a team leader, and some of the clients would only want to talk to him. Their way of showing that was if you were the person to pick up the phone, this person in particular would just say that person's name, my colleague's name. He would say, Matt. So you put Matt on the phone.
Are you serious?
So I quickly figured out that that's not the sort of clientele that I wanted to work with. They were high net worth individuals. You were this kind of low person on the totem pole. They knew it. Everyone knew it. So I think that was the day that I realized this is just not for me. But also there wasn't really a sales component to it. There was maybe 10% of your job description that had sales. There was a sales component to it. And that really just wasn't jiving with me. I wanted something that was more sales oriented or more marketing or advertising oriented. So I went out and I looked for an advertising agency. I found one, interviewed with them. They happened to love me, so they said, but they nixed the position. They said we're actually not going to continue with the position. So sorry about your luck, basically. But then a week later they called me and said, hey, you know what? There's a client of ours that is looking for a salesperson. Would you be interested? Of course. So that was RFG, and I interviewed with RFG. That was over 10 years ago. So I've been with them for 10 years. I was a salesperson for 5 years, and I was the only salesperson there. We were a small company back then. We were 4 people, I think it was. And so I did that for 5 years, and then we started to build a team, or I started to build a team. 5, 10, got to 13 or 15 at one point. So, we made some traction. Now we're a team of 7, fast forward another 5.5 years, team of 7. We've transitioned from account executive, the name account executive, to client partner.
I like that.
Yeah, some people think that's just semantics, but there's a lot that goes into that. And I think the overarching theme of or the genesis of that idea is that it's more client service associated or based, right? We want to make sure that our clients are getting the best service possible. And when you look at AEs in the industry, they're involved at the very beginning and they drop off the map and you never see them again. That's after your application to your payoff. You're really not talking to them ever. With our client partners, you're talking to them throughout the whole process. And I think that just builds a better rapport. It's better client service in general. So we've made that transition. So, I'm thrilled that I had my 10-year anniversary. I couldn't ask for a better company.
Right. Congratulations. I know all of us that know you in the industry too we're super stoked for that. I hadn't realized, I know you'd been there a while, but I hadn't realized it'd been a decade, right? And
yeah.
If you guys don't know, Brian, you ever see him anywhere, he is the friendliest, nicest, most genuine guy. And I can tell you, I can attest to it. When they say client partner, he's not kidding you guys. Like they are really 100% across the board. I mean, just digging into the long-term success. And, that's why a lot of people wouldn't talk about what goes on behind closed doors. And I'll tell you listeners out there and the people that are on this was their idea. This was Brian's idea to be like, hey, listen, I want you guys to really know the truth of what's going on. So there's no smoke and mirrors. There's no assumptions. This is how it probably is going. There's no probablys with you guys. That's the thing that I love about you guys too, right? So it's always very honest upfront and all that. And so, digging into that and, congratulations for the work that you guys do to develop your borrowers, right?
I appreciate that.
In your client partnerships, right? Because you're not a hard pitch. You're not a bit and dial it and kind of, banging out 750 calls a day in some cubicle off of some script or whatever. You really methodically go through that. I've been looking forward to this episode for a long time. And because there's so many questions that people have. And so go through your standard process. Guy calls in, and because I know it's different because once you have your people trained, they know what to expect with you guys, right? Mm-hmm. But let's say it's a new guy and he calls in, he says, okay, I got a flip that I want to do in, Yabba Dabba Dooville. And here's what I've got. What are some of the things that you start to do as you go through this to train them or to get them to set expectations? Because you guys, it's one thing too, you guys also, start to educate them and develop them on how to borrow your money. But if anything, are the setters of expectations. Right. This is how it's going to go. This is what's going to happen next. All of that, and you do that really, really, really well. So, talk about your process a little bit.
Sure. So, I think we do a great job. I think us in particular do a great job of reading the room. When you have a first-time investor, it's the hand-holding, and we're not afraid to do that. In fact, that's what's going to bring success to a first-time investor is the hand-holding. Mm-hmm. When you have some companies that are strictly tech-based or they're not as hands-on, it's a nightmare to work with a new investor. But with us, so many of our new investors become long-term investors because of the initial hand-holding that we did in the beginning. But that initial call, no matter the experience, is all information gathering. Right. And I think sometimes an investor will take that call as they're trying to get me to overshare. But there's really no such thing as oversharing. You're really just de-risking yourself along the way. So the more information that you give, you're de-risking yourself as much as possible, making it as easy as possible for the lender to say yes. And, I think sometimes lenders get a bad rap in the industry that they don't want to say yes. But every lender wants to say yes. We all want to do business. It's about making sure that it makes sense for us to say yes, right? So that initial call is so much about it's rapport building, but it's information gathering so that we can de-risk the situation. One of the first things that we ask is your team. So who is your team? I work with a mentorship program. And this is one of the first things that I tell them. Actually, it is the first thing that I tell them. It starts with the team. It's making sure you have a reputable lender. It's making sure that you have a reputable contractor, someone that you've done or that you've researched their work and you like their work. It's about meeting them in person to see if you jive, right? Because maybe the way one person does business is not the way that you would want you yourself do business. Then, there are plenty of fish in the sea. Your CPA, your property manager, these are all vital relationships that one needs to figure out in the early going. And I'm not saying that you can't switch contractors or you can't switch lenders or you can't switch agents. You're going to get a feel for that along the way. But you should definitely do the research, a significant amount of research ahead of time. I kind of relate it to finding a nanny, which we're in the middle of because our nanny is moving on. My wife's not, my wife and I are not just looking at resumes and saying, yeah, you can watch our kid. That's not how it's going to go. We're going to vet them seriously. We're going to check references. We're going to meet them in person. We're going to see how they are with our child. There's got to be a lot that goes into it because this is, I'm not going to relate it that much to watching your kid, but I am going to say that it's a big purchase decision, and it warrants.
I mean, but to that though, I mean, you bring up a good point, right? Because these projects are like somebody's baby,
right?
I mean,
right.
They're seeing it grow and develop, and they've got a plan for the exit, right? So, it's kind of similar. It's different, but it's the same, and it's for people that have all of their money invested in doing a project. I don't know how many of this folks,
well
right? It can be just as important as their kids, right? Because their future is hanging on this. I like that. You guys write that down. Everybody in your mind, make a mental note.
Exactly. I'm watching my wife go through it right now, and it's like this is a perfect example of what you should do when you're investing in real estate. But anyway.
Yeah.
But that initial call is all about information gathering, and it's incredibly important for the investor or the broker, for that matter, to be as transparent as possible, right? I think gone are the days where there are some seriously unreputable lenders in the industry, and it's just they're all over the place. You can easily find a reputable lender. Nowadays, there are various sources to check. There are references. It's just, I think gone are the days that you really have to be concerned about that. And it doesn't mean don't do your research, right? Do your research ahead of time so that you know that you can be transparent with that lender. And then when you find them, then let it all loose. Tell them what they need to know and elaborate, right? There are questions that will be asked. Will be, of course, what's the liquidity look like? Sometimes your income is asked for, your credit history, geographical location. So obviously, where is the property? Where do you live? If you live outside of a 100-mile radius, these are things that you want to be upfront about, so that the lender is armed to the teeth with information, and they can give you not just a partial yes or a conditional yes, but they are 99.9% certain, or 100, that they can work with you because you've divulged all the proper information.
Well, and to that too, you guys would never, and I think along the lines with so many of all of the reputable lenders, right, in the business, because there's still some people that are not a great fit, right, for anybody. I'll say the thing, but you're asking these questions too, and folks, I want you guys to understand they're not trying to cast judgment. Your goal is not to put somebody in a bad project that they're not going to be successful with, because things about the way and especially people with less experience. The last thing you want to do is put them into a project that's going to be problematic, and that is also going to be something that you're going to receive nonstop phone calls on why something's not performing. There are definitive reasons why you ask these questions.
For sure. I think that back in the day, and when I say back in the day, I'm talking maybe 5 years ago or so, or maybe a little bit longer, maybe 7 years.
It's a fast-moving business. I get it.
Yeah, exactly.
5 years ago is back in the day.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. That's true. I think if you were to over divulge, then let's just use cash for example. If you had more cash, then some people thought that lenders would say, well, they have more cash, so they can bring more to the table. So let's charge them a little bit more in points.
Very true.
Right. Mm-hmm. So when you're working with a reputable lender, that's not the case. The terms are the terms, right? And of course, things can change depending on where values come in and blah blah blah. but they're not charging you extra because you have more cash, because you make more income, and that sort of thing. It's just about getting a yes, and the best way to do that is to be as transparent as possible.
Yeah, and I think open and honest transparency, because that builds a trust, and that's pennies or coins in the bank, as I always say about the trust and rapport bank, right? Your goal is not to be a one and done with a client. You want to develop that relationship. I mean, obviously, partnership is in the title. So you want to be able to do 20, 30, projects for them over the next several years. And so that was always part of the success. People would say, how do you get these guys to come back to you time and time and time again? And I would tell them, I train people how to borrow my money. Right. And so once they understand that, and I think you guys do a phenomenal, brilliant job of that up front. When it goes to behind closed doors, let's talk about that a little bit. You've got that initial first call. You've done the qualifying questions. You make sure that somebody knows what they're doing. They've got realistic expectations. It's a doable deal. All of this. They've put their package together and submitted it. What are some of the things as an underwriter or this that you go to, because you've got them heading down that path to success, but there are things behind closed doors that might not come up on those calls. It happens a lot, where you'll say, "Oh, that's a red flag. Let's talk about some of those things."
Right.
And do you go back and address that, or is it some things that are just deal killers right away, where something's like, "Yep, that's dead"?
I think it has a lot to do with the accuracy of information on the front end. When we've evaluated the deal initially, we know that it works per our underwriting guidelines, based on either the word of the investor or the broker, or based off of the limited documentation that we would collect up front. It's a matter of when that information is then provided, if it hasn't been provided already, what does it look like? Is it entirely accurate? Experience is a great example. When we say experience, we're talking about fix and flips or fix to rents in the last 3 years, right? Now, I think a lot of times lenders will just say, "What's your experience in the last 3 years?"
Yeah.
The number, they'll say 5. Okay, great. You're qualified for this tier, blah blah blah. But they didn't go into any detail on what that 5 was, right? Were those 5 turnkey properties? Were they purchased cash? Were they purchased 10 years ago and then they were recently flipped? Was it a primary home that you rented and then you sold it, or you're currently renting it now? Experience can mean so many things, and it's a lender's job, in my opinion, to make sure that they go into detail as to what that means. So we see a lot of deals where an investor will tell us 5, 6 properties, and then we check the experience via schedule of real estate owned or some of the various resources that we have,
Mm-hmm.
and it's actually 1 or 2, right? Now, it may not kill a deal, but it could change the terms, right? Because
Absolutely.
Everybody has different tiers that they work off of.
That's right. And so for those of you guys that are like, okay, what's he talking about with tiers? That's different pricing metrics levels. So obviously the more experienced you're going to get, the less of a risk, like he talks about, to mitigate that is, they're going to give you a little bit better pricing. The other thing that I want everybody to totally understand on this, when a lender says to you about experience, they're not, "Oh yeah, I've got 5 in experience." It doesn't mean that you helped your cousin Timmy go and paint 1 bedroom on a flip or hang drywall for 10 minutes. That means, were you the credit sponsor? Did you borrow money or bring equity or bring a house to the table where you were on title? Now, there's different ways that a lot of different lenders do this, but understand experience isn't just, my dad had some rentals when I was in college, and, so I did that. It's got to be, and it's now they've been out of college for 20 years. It's relevant current experience. And a lot of that has got to do who held the responsibility for making sure that loan performed financially, right?
Right. Exactly right.
So when you guys consider that, well, let's do it this way. We'll back into it this way. How do I want to ask this question? See, this is one of those editing parts where we get edited out. So Brian, talk about the top 5 mistakes that a borrower would make when they're going to get a loan. because it's all going to come out in the wash. It always does. So what are the top 5 things that you could, as somebody that's run this business for a decade, and also worked on Wall Street at JP Morgan, what are some of the top 5 mistakes that people make or assumptions that they make going into this trying to borrow money?
So when you say assumptions, that really resonated, because I think investors and brokers assume that they're not being evaluated just like we're being evaluated. Everyone is being evaluated in the transaction, from agent to CPA, and maybe not CPA, but the investor, the broker, and how well everyone performs, right? I think it's known that a lender is certainly being evaluated. So you do a loan with me, you want to see how it goes. How was the communication in the very beginning? How quick was the closing process? How easy was the appraisal, the inspection, you name it, right? And then post-closing, that's a whole separate issue. How was the servicing? How quickly were the draws given to me?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that sort of stuff is common knowledge, that it's being evaluated by an investor. And if they don't like it, they go elsewhere on the next loan.
Yeah,
but
they sure do.
Same is true that the lender is also evaluating. How responsive are you? How communicative are you? How transparent were you, right? That goes back to what we were talking about before. If you withheld a lot of information, we didn't find out until later on in the process, maybe we still made the loan because it still worked. That's a problem, and we're gonna remember it the next time that we do business together.
They will. You guys, everyone remembers. Okay,
exactly.
Everybody remembers.
Right, and this is part of the peeling back the curtain. Maybe some lenders wouldn't admit that, but I think it should be common knowledge. Everyone is being evaluated all the time, right? Your responsiveness is incredibly important to a transaction. We're trying to get things done quickly for you. We want to make sure that you're doing things for us that that in turn gets the deal done. So I think people make the assumption, or investors and brokers make the assumption, that they're not being evaluated. It's only them who are evaluating, when that couldn't be further from the truth. We're both evaluating.
And borrowers, you have to realize too, it's like that Jerry Maguire line where he's in there and he's like, help me, help you, right?
Yep.
So when they ask for documents, it's not just because they have nothing better to do and they were bored and they're like, well, let's add this doc requirement to this because I didn't have anything better to do. There's specific reasons, and if you guys as borrowers are not providing that, it's a problem. And so if the acceptance of the loan is stalled, it's kind of like you might want to look in the mirror, you guys, because everybody wants to close these loans, especially RFG. They're not in the business of not closing loans, to what Brian talked about earlier. So if they're asking for certain documents, there's a reason for it, because they're trying to expedite, because private money lending, we're in the speed of money business. That's what we do. Help us help you, right?
Exactly.
Is that an issue for you guys if you see somebody like somebody gets real red hot on a call, right? On that initial call. They're like, yeah, bah, 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 bah. And then the documents come in slower than molasses. I mean, like watching paint dry. And then they're like, well, when am I going to close? Well, I need the purchase contract, dude.
Yeah. That's the, we take it all with a grain of salt, right?
Sure.
Some of our investors have W-2 jobs, and some of them are full-time investors. Either situation, if you're a full-time investor, maybe you're out in the field. Maybe you're a contractor and you're not near a computer. Maybe you're in a W-2 job, you're a high-powered position, and you can't check your personal emails that frequently. Everybody has a situation, but it's when, like you said, when you say, when can we close? But you haven't provided any of the documents that we sent you a stip list of all the documents that we needed. That's when it becomes a problem, right? It's like, well, did you check any of the 4 emails that we sent with the remaining documents that need to be provided? So there's a clear distinction between the two, and I work with investors. Over the 10 years, I've worked with investors that are W-2, that are full-time investors. It doesn't really matter what your position. We get it, and all lenders get it. It's more about, did you get it to us without asking for updates and not looking at your previous emails that listed out exactly what we needed, right? I think that there are too many times where investors feel that it's on you, on the lender, and the ball's in their court, when really the ball is actually in the investor's court. They just haven't checked it out.
Correct. I mean, how? So let's get into that as we're as we're marching down the path of how to be successful with a quality lender like you guys, right? Give them your basic thing on how to work with you guys and the best way to really get that file in. So once it goes behind the curtain, it goes through underwriting, like this. Pitch that out on how you're going to say, okay, listen, this is what we expect.
I think it all
go through your
starts,
process on that.
right. I think it all starts with that first call, right? And actually it starts before that, so that you as the investor have all your ducks in a row for that call, right? So if it's a it's a wholesale deal,
That's a great point.
We shouldn't be finding out at the the last moment, right? And it's only when we start coordinating with title and we see that there's a wholesaler on the deal. That shouldn't be the case, and really that wouldn't happen with us anyway, because we would see that beforehand. But the point is still valid. It all starts with that initial call and having all the ducks in a row and being as transparent as possible. And it's not just about one's qualifications; it's about the logistics of the deal, right? Are you adding square footage? If maybe you're keeping the square footage, but you're adding a bathroom, or you're adding a bedroom. These are all things that can affect the deal significantly. Is it a wholesale deal? There are some lenders that will only lend a percentage of the wholesale or the assignment fee, right? Some are based off of the as-is value. If the as-is is greater than, equal to, or greater than the purchase plus the assignment fee, then they'll fund the whole thing, theoretically, depending on what the after repaired value is. But that sort of information is vital on the initial call, and a lot of times it's left out, and we have to figure it out along the way. And that's not necessarily a problem for us. We'll figure it out. We'll make the deal work. But I guess the question was kind of, how does it go as smooth as possible? That's how it goes as smooth as possible.
Yeah, because there's so many times when people call up to try to get financing, right? And they'll say, "Hey, I got this deal. You guys do that?"
Yeah.
And you're like,
right.
It's not like you guys are driving around in a 1978 Eldorado with a bag of cash in the back of the trunk, and you just show up and go, "Here you go." It doesn't work like that anymore, folks. This is a business, and it's treated as such. And so I think, to echo his point on this, especially because they're very detailed on the first call. I will say that about RFG. They know how to close loans. They're very good at it, and they've been doing it a long time, right? But be ready to make the call, you guys, because if you just call them up and go, "Hey, Brian, what's your rates?" It's like
I can't tell.
Right? It's like asking a football coach, like, "So you guys throw or run or what? Like you guys you play foot? Like what's up?" Like,
yeah.
No, guys, that's not going to help you. Number one, work with a quality company like RFG, but it's also not going to speed anything up. So be ready to make the call. So I love that, Brian. A lot of people don't realize that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Then once they get it in, and let's say that you guys all have a great conversation, you set expectations, because you guys always do that right on the first call, right away, right up front, and they send it in. Then what?
Then it's about the collection of the documents and a filled out application, right? So that's another piece, is making sure that the application is completed. And lenders vary depending on how they structure their intake process. But for us, application, certain set of documents, which is not all the documents, but documents necessary for making a preliminary decision. Also with the information that we were provided with on the first call. If we have those things, an appraisal and inspection is ordered right away. And that gets sort of the 1.5, maybe 2 week time frame going.
Always waiting on third party. Always, guys.
Exactly. And in that time, you're exactly right. The third parties are involved, and we're waiting to get those reports back. But in that time, we've sent out a STIP list. we've asked the borrower for, this document, that document, blah, blah, blah. It's probably, usually a list of, 7 things or so. And once we receive those, then we are ready to close. We're waiting for the appraisal, we're waiting for the inspection, we're waiting for title to come back clear. But after that 1.5 weeks pass, we'll get the appraisal and the inspection. It's usually sooner than that, but just to give a conservative time frame, the appraisal and the inspection back. We'll review the numbers with the borrower, make sure it all works with them or for them. And then again, we're ready to close because we have the okay from the borrower. Now it's really just a matter of title. Title is usually back, but maybe it takes another day or two for title to come back clear, and then all parties are ready to close. We schedule a date, and then we provide the purchase price at the table, and the rehab funds get held in escrow with us.
Well, I want to echo what he's telling you guys, everybody. Listen, the appraisals are going to get ordered. There's nobody that does an appraisal that day in the afternoon, and all of a sudden, within 24 hours, you've got a full appraisal inspection back. It does not work that way. But you guys need to expect that you're going to be working with your lender. She's going to be digging in. I know this because we've sent deals to them where this is the time to have everything ready. If you want to close quickly, they will have everything stacked up. This is the time you do the homework so that once those third-party reports come in, bang, they're ready to fund immediately. But they can't do it, like he said, if you're not working with him to get all the documents that they send in. So that's your time in between the order of the appraisal and when it comes in, that you guys should have everything over that they need. And I'll tell you, there's nobody better at them than communicating and letting that out there, because Brian will send you a list and then follow up on it. Hey, that's great. Thank you for sending in both the front and back of your driver's license. I still need all pages of your bank statements. Come on, guys, let's go. He's a little bit nicer than that, but he that's the time to do it, right? So on your closing process, because I got one question after this too that we'll wrap up on, but on your closing process, how does that work? Explain to everybody, because you guys, man, if you guys have your docs, I know this from personal experience, it's like lightning in a bottle. It's like bang, 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 closed. So,
Yeah. I mean, once the appraisal and the inspection back and title is ready, we'll start that over again.
yeah, yes.
Once we get the appraisal and the inspection back and title is ready to go, it really only takes a day to draw up documents. It depends on the state. Some states we outsource documents, and in those states it takes a little bit longer. In I guess 16 of the 18 states that we're in, we draw up the docs ourselves. It could get done in as little as a half a day if we're really trying to rush.
And I've seen you do it. I've seen you do it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but we do it. It just depends on our speed, and we can get it done pretty quickly if we absolutely need to. But usually, closing is not scheduled for another 2 days, which is plenty of time for us to draw up documents.
So the final question I have, because when I was talking to people in a lot of our affiliates inside of the Think Affiliate Network for the marketplace and all that stuff, what you guys are involved with, the number one question I got, because everybody was excited about this podcast, to be able to hear you really tell the truth of how this did. You did it great today, by the way. Everybody, and this is unanimous across the board, wants to know and have you describe your 100% financing program that you have. And so can you go through that and the expectations of that and how that works? Because, I mean, I've probably talked about 6-8 people that we were doing this, and filming. You're going to be on the show today. And everybody, all of them asked the same question. Will he explain that real clearly so we all understand that? So would you grace everybody with the knowledge of how that one actually works in the realities of that loan?
Sure.
Program that you offer?
So for our 100%, really anyone can get it from all experience levels. Of course, we tier our LTVs based on experience. So the max that will go is 75% LTV, so 100% of both purchase from rehab up to 75% of the after repaired value. And the lowest that will go typically is 65%, so 100% of both purchase from rehab up to 65% of the after repaired value. One would just need to qualify per our underwriting guidelines, so enough liquidity, at least over a 650 credit score. We have stated income. We have stated income programs. We will look at the income, or we will look at the stated income on the application, but we're not checking W-2s. We're not checking tax returns. But this program is really one of a kind.
It is.
There might be one or two other lenders that do it in the whole country, but other than that, I don't, and I consider myself pretty knowledgeable in the industry. There really aren't that many lenders that do it.
There aren't. There aren't.
It affords the new investor to step into the game with limited cash out of pocket. A lot of them are starting out with $40,000 in liquidity, which is it's not chump change. But in the grand scheme of things, to get a deal done with that amount when you're bringing 10, 15, 20% down, you're liquidating all your funds, depending on the deal size, of course. With us, if it were, let's just create an example, if it were a $150,000 loan, you're probably only bringing $7,000 to closing, right? There's a huge difference between bringing 7 and in that same scenario, you're probably bringing 22,000 to closing with lender B. So it affords that new investor to step into the game and be comfortable stepping into the game, right? Because I think that's a big piece that, of course, if you have 40,000 in liquidity, you could do the other option, but is it comfortable for you? And when you're a first-time investor, you're looking for a little bit of comfortability. But then it's also really helping the experienced investor. I have a ton of investors that have done 10-plus projects and love working with us because it's the scalability of it. It's, in that same example, if I only have to bring 7,000 on, let's say 10 10 $150,000 loans, that's a lot different than bringing 22,000 on 10 different $150,000 loans.
Well, I think it helps ensure success too, because as you know, right, and I've lost count of how many houses I've flipped. Stuff comes up on every single project, right? And so if you have the liquidity and the comfort level like you talk about, it helps to ensure success. Because right now the statistics of the one and done in this country is like 63%, where somebody's going to go out and let's go flip a house on, or a couple of brothers or whatever. And it was such a painful process, number one, to borrow the money because expectations weren't met. And secondly, stuff comes up and it gets hard, and it's, they don't understand the right for the exit and all that stuff like you guys teach, that they're never going to do it again. And I think what you guys are doing in that 100% product, it helps them to go, okay, I can do this. Like I've got a partner now that believes in me, and I think that also is going to make people really loyal.
And that's the operative word too, partner, because no one is more of a partner than 100% lender, because
that's true.
You have no skin in the game essentially. Of course, if it doesn't turn out to be 100%, it's relatively close. And certainly closer than other lenders. But nobody is more invested than RFG when we're lending 100% of both purchase from rehab.
That's true.
So,
very true.
If you're looking for a partner, there's no one more invested in your future than someone who's lending you all of the purchase and all of the rehab.
Yeah, it is. And I know that you guys are specific markets and stuff like that. So as we close here today, tell people how to get a hold of you, because I guarantee you, everybody listening to this right now, their ears are buzzing. They've got a ton of ideas now. You've just probably lit a fire in an untold amount of people with this. Because remember, folks, it's 650 FICO, 65 up to max 75% of the future value, right, on that. And so it's a phenomenal program. How do they get a hold of you, Brian? Or
sure, yeah.
What's the best way to reach out and get things going with you guys right away?
You can always call the office, but I would recommend calling my cell phone, which I can give that out. It's 484-643-0919. And I'm always available on my emails as well. My email is Brian, BRIAN, @rehabfinancial.com. I'm available 24/7 on both of those.
Yeah, you are. I will say that. He answers the phone, folks, and if he doesn't, he'll call you back. You'll never go, I don't know, I couldn't get a hold of Brian. I don't know. No, you'll never say that about him. Brian, thank you for being on the show today. I mean, I could talk to you for 2 hours straight on stuff like this. And so, no, it isn't. And thank you for your love of really developing people in this business, because I love this business. I love it. And I think that it with what you guys are doing for education and all that, visit their website too, folks, because website is just a I mean, it's easy to navigate, and it's got a ton of information. And when you talk to Brian, he'll help you navigate it as well. Thank you so much today for being on the show, and you guys will be back, I know, and I can't wait to talk to you next time. So cool.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, man.